So week one is all about tapping into the energy of the win-win-win, or the energy of heaven on earth. I believe if we could truly see and differentiate the vibrational difference between abundance and lack, we can navigate much easier. And in order to truly access abundance, which is way beyond money, it's not just about money, we've got to vibrationally access it first. And so in today's video, I want to give you a really clear picture about what the win-win-win is, and specifically what the vibration of the win-win-win is. And then I want you to take some time and reflect upon where you feel like you're in alignment with that and where you feel like you're not. Because knowing where you are and where you want to be is the first step. That's how you can build a roadmap to where you want to be. And when you can vibrationally identify where you are and where you want to be, it's much easier to create a strategy to access abundance in the quickest way possible. And of course, remember that we are never, as Abraham Hicks says, we are not a job away from abundance or a person away or an experience away. We're a vibration away. In any given moment, we're always a vibration away from our most abundant self. As human beings, we are storytellers. We're giving this experience meaning. We're not just here experiencing life like robots and responding like robots. We actually have our own personal, intimate experience of life. And we have our own abilities to create a storyline, to give things a meaning. Because we've been steeped in lack and war for so long, and that separation, ultimately what's been happening is that we've been at war with our technology. So our body, mind, heart have been at war. Rather than our mind and heart working together to create a reality and an experience that the body thrives in, the mind and the heart have been at war. Really, the mind has enslaved the heart. There's a train going by, so I'm gonna wait 1 second. Really, the mind has enslaved the heart. And the mind, it wants our reality to be perfect. The mind wants to prevent us from having to suffer. But without connection to the heart, without being inspired from the heart, the mind becomes like a taskmaster. And being good or being better becomes a do or die situation. If we're not better, we don't survive. And that is really the crux of the lack matrix. And so often when we create from that space, we go to war with different aspects of ourselves. So rather than making peace with what we are, rather than taking life as an experience and learning from the past and continuing to grow and expand, often when we've experienced things in the past that we don't like, or things that make us feel that have broken our hearts, we often will cut ourselves off from the past. And so much of the success world and business world is all about, being better than you were before. And ultimately, there's nothing wrong with always growing and always expanding. But what I found on a subtle vibrational level is that so many people in the world that are on the path of success are always murdering their past self, always sort of subtly insulting their past self, always sort of going to war with their past self. And it's this battle between their past and their present. They want to be better. Often they want to forget their past. Often they want to act like it never existed. And this is very clear in even stories that we have. Like if you think of The Lion King or Frozen, in The Lion King, Simba goes away and he wants to forget the past because he feels shame about it. He thinks he's responsible for his father's death. And Elsa, she feels like she's not accepted in her world for who she is. So she wants to leave the past behind and go into her own world, create her own tower, and be separate from everyone. And in those stories, you eventually always have to go back, because when you cut off an aspect of yourself, you're not fully whole. So much of connecting to the win-win-win is re-establishing connection with our past, specifically in those areas where we where we experience things that cut us off from our source, where our hearts were broken, things that hurt. And that's why stepping into true abundance, the vibration of abundance, truly stepping into heaven on earth, is releasing the whole struggle. It's releasing the game of I have to prove I have worth and I have to be a part of this hierarchy. And it's about moving back towards the heart, going home to the heart, to our power, and to the source of what we are. And few people actually do this, because to move towards the heart is to go towards the things that scare us. It's to go into those vulnerabilities. And that's why, as the saying goes, the road is narrow and few people find it. But you're here. And I know you're here because not only do you want to create a life of abundance, and you know that that's the best thing for the planet is for us to thrive, but because you also are a healer on some level, in some capacity. I don't think you would be even attracted to my work if you weren't in some way a healer. Whether you do it through your art or you do it through personal sessions with people, or whatever you do, in some way your essence is healing to people. In some way you're attracted to the relational aspect of what it means to be alive. We are relational to our core. So it makes sense that if we truly want to experience abundance, we must heal our relationships. Relationships are primarily where we were wounded. If you trace back any wound, it's a relational wound at the core. Whether we lost trust with God or source, or we lost trust with others, or we lost trust with ourselves. But somewhere along the line, we lost trust. So in order to really get back on track and to step into our power and to be able to use our creative technology in a way that works for us rather than against us, we've got to go back to that original source where we were wounded and heal that relationship that was broken. So today's video, I want to keep very simple and just give you some stuff to really think about and ponder on until we move to the next video. So what I want to do is give us a clear picture about what our resonance feels like when we are primarily acting from a space of lack versus a place of abundance. It's a vibrational difference. Our resonance is different, and the motivation for what we do is different. And sometimes this can be hard to catch because two people can be doing the same exact thing, but because they have a different motive for it, because they're coming from a different vibrational space, they can have two completely different results. This is why it's so important to develop discernment and to really look deeply about what our motivation is for the actions we're taking. I'm going to talk about what our vibration feels like when we're in lack versus when we're abundance, and what kind of effect that has on the planet. The biggest thing that I've noticed when we are operating in the victim, aggressor, savior paradigm, usually we're in this battle to prove that we have worth and prove that we're enough. Because remember, there's ultimately not enough, and only those who are worthy can receive. And when we do that, because we're such powerful creators, our vibration itself continually programs the matrix with the same storyline. And that storyline is, there's not enough, we're not enough. Therefore, we have to follow this hierarchy and we have to play the game in order to be worthy. So when we're operating in lack, we are literally programming the grid, which is the collective story that humans are telling and interacting in. We're programming the grid with more lack. This is why we continually create the same things over and over and over and over again. Although our minds have been expanding at an exponential rate and our technology has grown, our heart has been sort of in the dark ages for a long time because the heart has been enslaved. And so the technology has gotten bigger than the heart, and the heart is finally catching up. But what happens at this level is that when we make the smallest shifts, massive change can happen because the heart is 5,000 times more magnetically powerful than the brain and 60 times more electrically powerful than the brain. So when we get the heart in alignment with the win-win-win and we get back centered in our heart, we can make massive shifts very quickly and very powerfully. I want to paint a picture of what our overall vibe is when we're in lack versus when we're in abundance. And I want you to take some time to really think about this. And after you assimilate this information, I want you to write down where you are at primarily most of the time. So just pay attention to what I'm saying. And if you have your notebook with you as I'm talking, just note where you feel like you are most of the time in relations to these things. If we know where we most need to shift, we're able to focus in on that and shift the things that matter most. And as I said, it's always a vibrational shift. And so when we're just focused on what we need to do especially for those of you who are in business for yourself. So if you're focusing on, I need to get clients, or I need to do my website, or I need to produce content, often that has nothing at all to do with what you actually need to do to shift into abundance. It's always vibrational first, vibrational alignment first, inspired action second. So this will help you see, hopefully, where you are vibrationally. The overall effect of the work that we're doing when we're in the space of we have to do in order to prove, and it's all focused on action, and action is the most important thing. What we're doing is the most important thing. What our overall vibration does is feed the beast. And what I mean by the beast is the unending, insatiable appetite for more. That we have to do more, be more, prove more, have more, because it's never enough. Because remember, in lack, we're never, ever enough. And that's why people can get addicted to their work, or get addicted to having things, or addicted to doing and having to prove, because you're feeding a beast that can never ultimately be satiated. It also causes that endless consumption of things, and you can see that mirrored in our world with the way that we consume and continually always consume things without actually allowing time to just be and to experience. So when we're in a strong vibration of having to prove our worth, we feed the beast. That's what our vibration does. It continually feeds a machine that actually ultimately can never be satisfied. And what we do is drain our life force in that world, in that reality, without actually receiving anything back. Because remember, you're not enough. So you may temporarily in moments feel worthy, but it doesn't last. You always have to continually be better and prove that you are better than others, or prove that you are worthy to receive. And it's an endless, painful experience to be in that type of a mindset. But when we are aligned with abundance, when we understand that Source feeds us from within and can sustain us from within, the overall effect of our work, the overall effect of our creation, and when I say work, by the way, I'm meaning the resonance that we create, the resonance that we emit through our primary focus, actions, and words. So when we're coming from the source, when we're coming from the place where we know we're enough, and we know there's enough, and we understand that we're here to experience this reality and to upgrade the program, then the overall effect that our vibration has, rather than feeding the beast, it strengthens the whole programming. It strengthens humanity. It strengthens our weakest link. And ultimately, it creates more abundance. It sustains us even more. It makes us more powerful, more empowered. It makes us feel safer to be on this planet. It gives us more security rather than less. So you can see that when we're acting in lack, it's an insecurity at the core, because it's based in fear. It's this idea that abundance is fleeting. There's never really enough. It can be taken at any moment. We're never really enough. So we have to continually be on our game to make sure that we survive. It's a survival game. Whereas when we understand that Source is fed from within us, and that we are always enough, and there's always enough, and we're the ones telling the story, and we can tell whatever story we want to tell, we can program the matrix to be what we want to experience. And in fact, when we're connected to the heart, that's how we know what to program the reality with. That's how we know what doesn't feel good. And so we change the storyline. We choose not to entertain those thoughts that we're not enough, and we continually move back to the source. When we do that, the overall effect we have on the grid is restorative. The overall effect we have on the grid is empowerment. When we're operating from a place of lack, the effect that our vibration has on the grid and on the planet is it weakens the immune system. It weakens the immune system of our entire trinity. So it weakens the planet because we're over-consuming, because there's never enough. It weakens humanity because when we are having to prove that we have worth and prove that we're better than others so that we can receive and we can be worthy before someone else is more worthy than us, when we're playing that game, we're actually sending out the vibration that humanity is not enough. And so we are part of, by participating in that storyline, we are part of weakening humanity as a whole, weakening the immune system of humanity. But when we're operating from source, from being fed directly from source, when we're connected to our abundant nature, we strengthen the immune system of the planet and we strengthen the immune system of humanity, because the overall energy, the quality of the vibration that we are emitting says we are enough and there is enough. And remember, our vibration is what programs the matrix, and it does program the collective. The more of us that focus on abundance and come from that space of abundance, the more abundance will be accessible to everyone. The more, if we believe we're enough and we don't have to prove anything and we trust that our needs will be met, we slow way down. We stop over consuming. We take our time. We understand that opportunities are a dime or a dozen. We don't have to jump on just everything that comes by. We don't have to sacrifice because we are enough, and we understand that Source wants to grow and expand us. So when we're coming from a space of abundance, we strengthen the grid. We strengthen the immune system of the planet. We strengthen the immune system of ourselves and other humans. And when I say strengthen the immune system, I'm talking about our overall resonance, because our resonance is our immune system. If our resonance is low, if our frequency is low, we are more susceptible to getting sick. We are more susceptible to attracting experiences that are painful, that are out of alignment, that cut us more off from the idea of abundance. But when our vibration is high, we are more of a match to abundance, to things going our way, to things working out smoothly. So you see the difference there. When we're operating primarily from the vibration of lack, and our motives and inspiration is coming from having to prove ourselves and prove our worth, we ultimately feed the addiction. It's kind of like I was saying, feed the beast, but we feed addictions. And often in the business and success world, especially online business, we feed the internet addiction. We feed unknowingly the addiction for people to have constant information, constant content, constant distraction. And while I think it's amazing that there's a lot of people putting out great content, we have to remember that the most important thing is for people to be empowered within, not to rely on us to give them content, not to rely on us to rescue them or save them. Ultimately, the long-term goal is to have everyone so connected to their own abundance that they know how to really set their resonance from within. And then, as we all get individually empowered, we can literally create anything. We become so powerful, and we can create an amazing world where all are free. But we have to individually get free first. And when we are approaching our business or our lifestyle even from lack, we feed addictions, because it becomes about distracting ourselves from the things that don't feel good, from the things that scare us. It becomes distracting ourselves from moving back towards the heart. What we're doing is moving towards the heart. We've got to move back into the heart. And the way back in is through those fault lines which we were wounded, where our heart was broken. And this is why, again, few people find this road, because the beast, the lack matrix, continually serves this reality of distraction. It continually serves the illusion. And so many empaths or intuitives or magical beings, when they want to start stepping into their gifts, and especially if they're doing online stuff, if you follow the classic formula out there, it is a lot about constantly giving content. And what I've found is that, again, whether we realize it or not, that can feed the beast. That can feed the addiction of not looking within, of not allowing ourselves to go within and go towards the things that are scary to us, or the things that feel vulnerable. So when we're in lack, our overall vibration feeds that addiction. It feeds that need to constantly be distracted, to constantly look at something else, or constantly have content, or constantly be entertained, so that we don't have to look within. And so many people, especially internet influencers and entrepreneurs, often feed this addiction and don't even realize it until they themselves realize how addicted they are, or how tired they are from constantly trying to give people enough. So this is a really important one to look at before you even get in the game, to really make that decision that you're not coming from a space of having to feed people's constant need to be distracted from what their heart is telling them, or from what's going on within them. When we're coming from a space of abundance, rather than feeding addictions, what we create and what we give inspires and it empowers and it causes people to connect more to their heart. Because when we're coming from the heart, when we're coming from that space within us where all things exist and where we are whole, we're vibrating very powerfully here rather than here. We're vibrating very powerful here. And for someone to be aligned with that, what it feels like on the outside is someone giving them permission to feel, someone giving them permission to be human, someone giving them permission to just be without having to do, rather than making someone feel insecure because you're rocking it and they're not. It makes them feel whole. It makes them feel connected. The overall effect when we are serving abundance, our hearts, the source, is completely different. The content that we create and the energy that we put out is completely different than when we're doing it from a space of lack. And remember, the only way to truly navigate this is to tune into where we are at, to constantly check in with ourselves and ask, is the action that I'm about to take, is the content that I'm about to put out, is the class that I'm about to put out, is this thing that I'm about to do or the job that I'm about to take, is it coming from fear? Is it coming from needing to prove that I have worth? Is it coming from needing money and no other space? Because of course we do need money. But asking ourselves where it's coming from and just checking ourselves like, wait, before I do anything, I want to make sure I'm tuned into my heart. I'm tuned into the truth that I am infinite and that this reality is infinite and that I have eternity to do this. There's no rush, that I'm here to really experience what it means to be human, and I can slow down and I can feel and I can be. And in fact, that's the highest leverage point I can play for the whole planet, because the planet's needing restoration. And if you think about when we're sick, what we need is to rest. What we need is to slow down. What we need is to receive. And that's the feminine energy that's coming back very strong, because it's the feminine energy that has been enslaved on the planet. The imbalance has been on the masculine side, and that's on the doing side. It's not wrong. The masculine side isn't wrong, and we're not meant to go to war with our masculine aspects, but we are meant to allow the feminine to take more of a precedence right now. And that feminine side is the receiving side, and it's the passive side. We're meant to be more passive right now and to allow ourselves to receive from source, allow ourselves to be filled up, and allow ourselves to be healed. So this is really important. When we're coming from abundance, our resonance sustains life. It empowers people, and it makes them feel okay to be human. It makes them feel okay to slow down. It gives them hope that they can receive and that they're worthy, even if they're not perfect. But if we create this illusion and this persona that we're perfect and we have it all together, and the reason why we're receiving is because we do A, B, C, and D, we create more of that illusion. And we unknowingly program the matrix with, we're subtly saying to people, you have to prove your worth. If you want abundance, you have to do rather than receive. You see the difference? Very important to get this right. When we're coming from a place of lack, the effect that our energy signature has, our resonance has on the grid, is that it drains it of power. And the reason why it drains it is because we're needing to we have to constantly be reassured that we're enough. We have to constantly have content in front of our face, or entertainment or distraction. We have to constantly have something to distract us. And that energy of feeling like we have to continually get from the matrix in order to feel safe or in order to be happy drains the energy of the grid. And that's why we have this scarcity rhetoric that's going on the planet. Like the pollution and the overconsumption of food, and our soils being depleted, and all the storyline and the narrative around the lack matrix. It's because we're draining the grid when we come from a space of having to prove our worth and constantly needing to feel validated that we're worthy. Business and all of it has been deeply, deeply steeped in this, and that's why we're seeing the issues that we're seeing. But when we come from abundance, when we come from that space that we know that there's enough and we know that we are enough, again, it slows our vibration way down, and we do naturally start consuming less, because it becomes less about doing and more about being, more about receiving, more about experiencing. And when we do take action and when we do partake, we do it because we're inspired to do it. We do it because we really want to. Half the things people do in the lack matrix, they're not doing because they want to. They're doing it because they feel like they have to, or because they're scared, again, of facing something they don't want to face. So it's like that constantly running from something you don't want. And that drains the grid. It drains the grid of resources. It drains the grid of energy. And again, it weakens the immune system of the planet. But when we're coming from a space of abundance, our resonance, rather than draining the grid, it empowers the grid. It gives it more power, more life, more hope. That's the main difference, is that when we're coming from abundance, we don't drain the grid or drain other people of energy. We empower the grid and we empower other people because we are being empowered from within. And that creates a stronger resonance on the planet of there's enough, I'm enough, we are enough, we're okay, we're safe. Do you see the difference? That's what's needed at the core level. In the healing on the planet. It's to heal this sort of insecurity and this fear that has come from believing that we're not enough and that there's not enough. So ultimately, when we are coming from a place of lack, the energy that we emit is vampiric in nature, and all of us have done this. When we are coming from a place of abundance, the energy that we emit, rather than being vampiric, is healing, it's empowering, it's restorative, it's more angelic, so to speak. And finally, I think this is one of the most important things to really think about, is that when we are coming from a place of lack, we psychically weaken other humans. And what I mean by that is, remember, we are all collectively connected. Our storyline is connected. We give collective meaning to things. And whether we realize it or not, when we are acting from a place of lack, we are perpetuating the storyline that we're not enough and there's not enough and we have to prove our worth. And because we are ultimately psychic beings at our core, we just haven't learned how to activate that. There's a major psychic warfare going on. When you have a bunch of people trying to create and do business and prove themselves, and they're coming from this extremely competitive space where they believe there's not enough, so they better do it first. We better do it first or we're not going to have enough. We better be the best or we're not going to be loved. Then we unconsciously send out a psychic energy stream that attacks other people, that we have to, whether we realize it or not, we have to make other people less than us so that we feel like we're more. When we believe we're not enough, we are emitting that frequency to all humanity because we are human and we're connected to all humans. So if we believe we're not enough, and we believe other people are not enough, whether we are consciously saying that or not, because remember how the mind works is it doesn't recognize the difference between what you say about someone else or what you're saying about yourself, and vice versa. So if you do not feel like enough in the programming, you are saying humanity's not enough. And this creates a major psychic warfare. We psychically weaken each other when we do this. We psychically drain the grid. We basically attack humanity where we're most vulnerable because we're feeling that our vulnerabilities are our weakness rather than our strength. So major psychic warfare when we are in lack. And you can feel it when you go into the world and you are attempting to prove your worth or feel better or distract yourself. You can feel, people feel more like an annoyance and an irritation. It feels like people are in your way. When you listen to people who are inspirational, things just bug you and you feel triggered and annoyed because there's that constant like, humanity isn't getting it. We're not enough. There's not enough. That we're doing it wrong. We're bad. We're ruining the planet. You see that energy? It is not helpful to any of us. So when we're acting from that space of lack, we are psychically attacking and psychically weakening humanity and therefore the whole planet because we're all connected and we are stewards over the planet. Because we have the technology we have the power to either destroy or to create. And when we are coming from a place of lack, our energy is naturally destructive. But when we come from a place of abundance, we psychically enhance humanity. We psychically bless humanity. And if we can get our subconscious programming in alignment with abundance, in alignment with the belief that we are enough and there's enough, we are sending that out psychically to other humans. Every time we entertain thoughts that encourage us rather than criticize us, every time we're more self-loving, that we choose compassion and understanding for ourselves and other humans, we psychically strengthen each other. This is why it is so key to have self-love. And it's why it's so key to remember that the planet itself is asking for restoration and it's asking for healing. So it's going to naturally support those people who are moving more towards abundance, who are strengthening the grid. The more you strengthen and give life to, the more life will be given to you. The more life force you'll have available to you. You will naturally be supported in this when you start stepping into this. So when you think about where you are in your vibe, in terms of where you're coming from, if you're coming from a place that I'm enough and there's enough, and that we're worthy of love, and we're worthy of abundance, and we're worthy of thriving, all of us, you strengthen humanity because the energy you're sending out and the energy you're entertaining. In other words, this is about getting your thoughts in alignment with abundance, because so many of us entertain thoughts of lack, thoughts that we're not enough, comparing ourselves to others, believing that we're just not doing it right, or we're just broken, or we just don't have enough, or we're somehow just not enough. But when we allow ourselves to really connect to the love that Source has for us, it is an overwhelming, empowering experience. It allows our mind, which is our creative principle, to create for us rather than against us. When we are in lack and we're tuned in and tapped into the collective conversation of lack, we constantly weaken ourselves. We psychically weaken ourselves and we psychically drain our energy. We basically vamp humanity. So this is extremely important. So I want you to think about where your vibration is most of the time in relation to these things, especially how you work, whatever your work is. And what I mean by work is not just what you do for a 9-to-5 job, but I mean what your mind and heart is focused on the majority of the time. What is actually motivating you to take this class, to move forward, to do anything that you're doing? Are you motivated because you're trying to prove something? You're trying to prove that you have worth? You're trying to prove that your past self is not who you are anymore? Or is it that you are restoring yourself, you're restoring your heart, loving your past self, forgiving your past self, forgiving humanity, forgiving the past of humanity, investing in humanity? Because when you invest in yourself, you invest in humanity. And when you invest in humanity, you invest in the planet. If you go to war with humanity, you basically go to war with the planet, because again, humanity has the power to destroy the planet or to heal the planet. And the way we're going to do that is if we are strengthened from within, believing that we are enough and that we're good, that we're love at our core, or if we keep believing the rhetoric that we're bad, that we're somehow that we're bad and that we're evil and that we are going to destroy the planet. Because if we believe that, that's exactly what we will do. And the last thing I want to say is remember that there's an infinite amount of realities. This is not just one reality that's going to play out. We are all jumping into our own timelines, and we will line up to the world that we primarily believe in. So it's really important to look at these things from a core level. This is how we reprogram from the inside out, rather than just doing what we've always done and continuing the perpetual cycle of lack, not even realizing that we're doing it. And so many people have the best intentions, but still approach life and still approach their business and approach relationships from this idea of lack, from a broken perspective. From the idea that I have to separate myself from the things I don't like. I have to separate myself from my mistakes. I have to prove that I'm worthy. I have to appear perfect. All of those things come from lack and perpetuate lack. No matter how much you sacrifice and how high you get on the hierarchy, you're creating more lack. And in the end, how much of your heart do you have left if you've sacrificed along the way? It's important for you to know where you are here and for you to get to the core of your motivation for whatever you're doing. This right here actually is some of the hardest work, because it's one thing to recognize it, but it's another thing to change our habit. So when I give our video on Thursday, I'm going I'm going to be giving some tips on how to shift the habit of where you've been and how to heal those places, go back to those original wounds where you picked up beliefs that you're not enough and there's not enough, and change the storyline. It's so essential to go back into our past where we were originally wounded, where our hearts were originally broken, and change the programming there. The messages that we picked up and the things that we believed at that point. Now that we have this retrospect, they say hindsight is 20/20. Now that you have this retrospect, going back to your past self, where you were before you were wounded, is how you are going to heal the program. And that's why it's so essential that you don't just leave your past in your past, that you don't like the Lion King or like Elsa. It's important that you go back if you want to truly take your kingdom and live in heaven on earth. Super important. So I'd love to hear where you are with this, and spend some time to really consider where you are in this process and where you still believe in lack, and identify where it came from. So if you can see, I feed the addiction of the beast. I feel like I have to constantly prove myself. Ask yourself, when was the first time I ever felt this way? And trace it back to its origins. And then from there, see if you can give yourself a new message based on what you know now. I'd love to hear what this experience is like for you, and I hope you guys are doing well. Much love.